Good morning, Attorney General.
Good morning, Senator.
My questions also relate to the plebiscite, and I do want to tease out precisely what you mean by well advanced, further to the line of questioning of Senator Gallagher. When you say that this is well advanced, precisely whom have you met with? I mean, you've talked about some of the stakeholders that you've engaged with, but have you met with Australian Marriage Equality and sought their view on this? And what was that?
And in fact, one of my senior staff, Mr Folkes, has met with them on several occasions.
You mentioned you've met with the Australian Christian Lobby.
Yes.
They've put the proposition that anti-discrimination laws should be suspended to facilitate a hate campaign against the gay and lesbian community. Is that something...
Well, Senator Sims, in fairness, I know this is a sensitive issue, but in fairness, they didn't say that. They said that...
Why else would they want to seek to suspend the anti-discrimination laws?
Well, Senator Sims, there have been some who have proposed that anti-discrimination laws should be suspended. Now, there are very obvious practical problems with that. Among them, the obvious one that most anti-discrimination laws in this country, as I'm sure you're aware, are laws of the states rather than the Commonwealth. They didn't say to facilitate a hate campaign. That's, I'm sure, not their purpose. That's your editorial remark upon what you say might be the consequences of that happening, and I don't share that conclusion, Senator.
So is this something that's in the government's contemplation?
No.
To suspend? So that you're definitely not doing that and you won't be pursuing that?
That is not the government's position.
And you won't be pursuing it?
It's not my intention to.
Can I ask, in terms of the people who've been working on the plebiscite, how many staff have been working on this project? Last time I was here at Senate Estimates, I did ask some questions in that regard, and I sort of obtained quite an obtuse response in terms of identifying the staff time, but I am very
I'm sure the response you obtained, Senator, was not obtuse, but maybe you meant to say it was opaque. If it was opaque, it wasn't meant to be.
Thank you for the clarification. But I am certainly keen to get a sense of exactly how much time has been spent on this project. And
well, Senator Sims, I'll invite Mr Manning, who's the senior officer of my department with overall responsibility for this project, to respond to you from a public service point of view, as it were.
Yeah.
But before he does, I can tell you that my office has been very engaged in this. Mr Folkes, who graces us with his presence as we speak, has in particular taken responsibility for this in my office and has been very actively engaged with stakeholder groups on both sides of the question.
Sure. Just before we move to the department, Attorney, do you have capacity then within your office to deal with the complexities around the plebiscite, or have you had to commission people from outside to give advice? I mean, it's a fairly unusual endeavour. We haven't taken this approach to legislation for some time.
Well, I think that's a fair point, Senator Sims. Certainly, at a political level, there is a very sophisticated knowledge of the issue and what we might call the terrain of the issue across the various stakeholder groups within my own office. We have sought advice obviously from my department, but also we've consulted with various specialist groups, not just stakeholders. And my department, from a public service level, has been very active on the issue, as Mr Manning can tell you, if perhaps he can add to my remarks.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Senator. Thanks, Attorney. So we have 3.6 people, so someone works 3 days a week, Senator,
yes,
who are permanently set aside to work on plebiscite issues as required. I think there's two reasons for the obtuseness of the previous
or
answer.
Opaque.
Opacity.
In addition to those 3.6 people, they of course are in a structure, and there are managers such as myself who work on it, as well as a number of other issues. I think also my recollection from my last answer, last estimate, was that it's difficult to predict exactly when those 3.6 people started working on it, because if you're aware of the debate, there's been a number of private members' bills in relation to it, and our area that administers the Marriage Act as people have put forward propositions, have of course formed views on those propositions. How would the legislation work if that happened or not happened? So there's been a body of work going over a longer period of time involving a larger group of people.
But Mr. Manning, I don't want to cut you off, but I am conscious of limited time today. And what I'm really trying to drill down on is what senior staff have been working on this project and what are they being paid? Because I'm trying to get a sense of how much this is all costing.
Okay.
And we've got the $160 million in the contingency, but that's not really the full cost. There's also a lot of staff time too. So I'm keen to find out what level are they at and what are they being paid?
So I'll concentrate on the people specifically allocated.
Yes.
There's one, what's called an EL2 officer.
Yes.
I can just give you the salary range.
That'd be great.
Salary range is between $115,778 $115,778
Right.
to $131,869.
Yes.
The other 2.6 are what called executive officer level 1, EL1s we call them in public service parlance. Their salary range is between $95,154 to $115,788.
Yes. Okay.
I don't have the ranges of those managers.
And have they been working on this full time, or this has been one of the projects they've been working on?
Virtually full time. From time to time, they do some other.
Wow, it's a very costly endeavour, then, isn't it? Senior staff working on a project such as this, as well as the $160 million price tag. Okay, thank you, Mr. Manning. Question for you, Attorney General. In addition to the $160 million that's been put aside for the plebiscite itself, which is, as you've identified, is based on the advice of the Electoral Commission in terms of how much it would cost to put the question. Has any money been allocated within the budget within other contingencies for the yes and no campaigns? And will the government be giving public money to the campaign against marriage equality?
First of all, the question of funding of the yes or no case is under consideration, and it's not a matter on which a decision has been made. Were there to be an allocation of public money, then of course both sides of the argument would be entitled to equal treatment.
So how much money would we be talking about?
Well,
then?
we haven't made any decision in relation to that, if any.
And who would you give the money? Who would you give the money to? I mean, you mentioned you met the Australian Christian Lobby. Are they the organisation you would give money to for the No campaign?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, there are many dimensions to this, Senator, as I'm sure you appreciate. One of the dimensions is, in the event there were to be public funding, and I want to make it perfectly clear that no decision has been made for there to be public funding. But were there to be public funding, obviously one of the issues would be the appropriate recipients on behalf of the yes or the no case of public funding.
How would you ascertain who would be the appropriate recipients? Because you've mentioned preparation for this is well advanced. I mean, if that's the case, surely these matters are in the consideration of the government. I mean, my understanding, based on the comments that you have made on this previously, is that should the Liberal National Coalition be returned to government, you'll be moving on this quite quickly.
Correct.
So if that's the case, how will you ascertain who to give this public money to?
Well, obviously, that in the event there were to be public funding, then on behalf of both the yes and the no case, there would have to be an entity or a structure representative of that point of view who is accepted by the stakeholders as being the appropriate recipient of those funds.
Does it not concern you, as the chief legal officer in this country, that a potential, let's call them a bidder for these funds, a potential recipient, has advocated for the anti-discrimination laws in this country to be suspended? I mean, does that not concern you in terms of the kind of campaign that
Senator
organisation
Sims,
might... I'll just conclude my question, Minister. Does that not concern you in terms of the kind of campaign that they may run on public funds?
Well, Senator Sims, what concerns me is to have a fair and transparent plebiscite campaign in which, in the event there were to be public funding, both sides get an equal opportunity to put their case.
But one side is talking about actually wanting to suspend anti-discrimination laws. You've said not to run a hate campaign. Certainly to be able to use discriminatory language and to offend the principles of the Anti-Discrimination Act. I mean, that's their intention. Otherwise, why would they seek to suspend anti-discrimination laws? I mean, surely that must ring alarm bells for you as the chief legal officer to say, gosh, this is an organisation that might be getting public funds. What kind of impact would that have?
Well, for a start, I haven't agreed with you that ACL would be the obvious recipient of funds for the no case.
Will you rule it out today?
No, I'm not ruling
anything
anything out, Senator, in relation to a matter on which no decision has been made, even if there'll be public funding. So, Senator Sims, I think it is very unhelpful, if I may say so, for either side of this debate, and it is a debate in which people of goodwill feel passionately on either side of the question, to ascribe evil motives to those who have an opposite view to their own.
Well, it's a point of clarification. I wasn't ascribing evil motives. I was drawing a natural inference from the statements that have been made by the Australian Christian Lobby, in that they have said they wanted to suspend the anti-discrimination laws to mount a campaign. I made the obvious point that obviously they wish to do so that they can mount a particular campaign. I don't think that's an unfair characterisation of their position.
Senator Sims, people who want to run a no campaign because they don't believe the current definition of marriage should be changed. They are perfectly entitled to prosecute that argument.
Well, look, the argument or the point I was putting to you was suspending the anti-discrimination laws in which to make that case. And that was the point I was pressing you on and the implications of that. Just on the costs associated with the plebiscite.
Well, you might have to come back to that, Senator Sims, because I do have a lot of people wanting to ask questions. I will go to Senator Madigan before you, Senator Heffernan.
Senator McDonald, before you do, I wonder if I can just address one thing that Senator Sims said. I said before that that it is not my view that the anti-discrimination laws should be suspended. And I pointed out the practical difficulty that most anti-discrimination laws are state laws, and I said it is not my intention to suspend the anti-discrimination laws. I think I should go a little further and rule out suspending the anti-discrimination laws.
Thank you, Attorney General.
Okay, thanks.